Ruthless biker kicks a dog for fun, not knowing Keanu Reeves owns it. The sun beat down mercilessly on the bustling film set of John Wick in Brooklyn Heights, its rays reflecting off the asphalt in shimmering waves. The air was thick with the scent of hot tar, mingling faintly with the aroma of street food drifting from vendors parked just beyond the perimeter. Camera equipment littered the area, cables snaking across the ground like dormant serpents, while crew members darted about, their voices a constant hum beneath the clatter of metal and the occasional bark of direction. Amid this controlled chaos stood Keanu Reeves, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder, a quiet figure in the storm of activity. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, his dark eyes scanning the set as the morning shoot wound to a close. That's a wrap for this scene, folks. The director, Chris, called out, his voice cutting through the cacophony like a blade. We'll take a 1-hour lunch break. Meet back here for the next setup. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the crew, who had been at it since dawn, their faces flushed with exhaustion and anticipation. As they began to disperse, their chatter turned to lunch plans, a group gathering near the catering truck. Hey, Keanu, one of them shouted, a wiry grip named Alex. We're hitting that new deli on Atlantic Avenue. You in? Keanu turned toward the voice, a friendly smile tugging at his lips, but his attention quickly shifted elsewhere. Max, the pit bull who'd been stealing scenes all morning, stood panting heavily in the heat, his tongue lolling out as he saw it. Relief from the oppressive temperature. The dog's broad chest heaved, his sleek black and white coat glistening with sweat. Keanu's smile softened into something more thoughtful. You guys go ahead, he replied, his gaze still fixed on Max. I think I'll take care of our four-legged friend here. It looks like he could use a walk. Tom, the dog handler, a lanky man with a clipboard perpetually tucked under his arm, stepped forward, his brow creasing slightly. That's all right, Mr. Reeves. I can handle Max. It's my job, after all. Keanu held up a hand, his expression earnest. I'd like to do it, if that's okay. It'll help me bond with him for our upcoming scenes. He paused, a flicker of curiosity crossing his face. Plus, I've always wondered what it's like to own a dog, even if it's just for an hour. Tom hesitated, his fingers tightening around the clipboard, but Keanu's easy sincerity won him over. All right, Tom relented with a nod. Just be careful. Max is a sweetheart, but he can be a handful. With Tom's approval secured, Keanu set about preparing for their walk. Tom handed him a sturdy leash, a handful of plastic waste bags, and a collapsible silicone water bowl. Keanu clipped the leash to Max's collar with gentle, deliberate movements, tucking the other items into the pockets of his jacket. He patted them once to ensure they were secure, then knelt to Max's level, his voice warm and inviting. Ready for a walk, buddy? You thirsty? Max's tail wagged enthusiastically, his earlier discomfort forgotten in the face of Keanu's attention. Standing, Keanu gave a small wave to the lingering crew. See you in an hour, he called out, then tugged gently on the leash. Together, the unlikely pair stepped away from the film set's chaos, venturing into the sun-drenched streets of Brooklyn Heights, where an unpredictable adventure awaited. Keanu and Max stepped into the sun-soaked streets of Brooklyn Heights, leaving the film set's clamor behind. The heat pressed down like a heavy hand, the pavement radiating warmth that shimmered in the air. Max's claws clicked rhythmically against the concrete, his panting growing louder with each step, a steady reminder of his need for water. Keanu's eyes scanned the surroundings rows of brownstones, trendy boutiques, and the occasional tree offering meager shade. He adjusted his grip on the leash, his leather jacket creaking faintly as he moved, determined to find a spot where Max could cool off Dodd as they turned a corner. A weathered structure loomed into view, iron and ash, a biker bar with a row of gleaming motorcycles parked out front like sentinels. The rumble of engines vibrated through the air, and the faint tang of gasoline mixed with the street's heat. Keanu's brow furrowed slightly, his instincts prickling at the bar's rough aura, a stark contrast to the neighborhood's polished charm. But then he spotted it. A public water fountain nestled between two bikes, its metal glinting in the sunlight. Relief washed over him. "There we go, Max," he murmured, guiding the pit bull toward it. With practiced ease, Keanu pulled the collapsible bowl from his pocket, popping its silicone sides into shape. He pressed the fountain's lever, filling the bowl with cool water, and set it down for Max. The dog lapped at it eagerly, droplets splashing onto the pavement as his tail wagged in gratitude. Keanu stepped aside to let a burly biker Mike, judging by the name stitched on his vest, use the fountain next. Mike's tattooed arms flexed as he splashed water on his face, then glanced at Max with a gravelly chuckle. "Nice pit bull you got there," he said, his voice rough but warm. "People misjudge him, you know. Kinda like us bikers. Loyal as hell if you treat him right." Keanu nodded, appreciating the insight. "You're right about that. There's more than meets the eye." As Max finished drinking, a waitress emerged from the bar, Sarah, her apron stained but her smile bright. She knelt beside Max, offering her hand for a sniff. The dog responded with a gentle lick, his tail thumping the ground. "Oh, what a good boy," she exclaimed, scratching behind his ears. "Kinder than half the guys in there, I'd bet." She winked at Keanu, who returned a quiet smile. He emptied the bowl, folded it back into his pocket, and waved a thanks. "Appreciate the welcome," he said, tugging Max's leash to continue their walk, the brief encounter leaving a flicker of warmth amid the day's heat. The streets grew quieter as Keanu and Max wandered farther from iron and ash, the biker bar's rumble fading into a distant hum. They soon reached Quiet Corner, a quaint cafe with a shaded patio that promised respite. Wrought iron tables sat beneath a canopy of string lights, their soft glow dormant in the daylight, but adding a touch of whimsy. Keanu chose a table near the edge, unclipping Max's leash and patting the chair beside him. "Up you go, boy," he said softly. With surprising grace, Max hopped onto the seat, settling in with a contented sigh, his well-mannered demeanor. Drawing smiles from nearby patrons, a waitress approached Emily, her name tag read carrying herself with the easy confidence of someone who loved her job. "Good afternoon," she greeted, her professional tone softening as she noticed Max. "Aren't you a handsome fella?" she cooed, addressing the dog directly. Keanu smiled. "He certainly is. Hope it's okay he's up here with me." Emily waved off his concern. "As long as he's behaved, we're happy to have him. What can I get you?" Keanu considered. "For a moment, coffee and a steak sandwich, please. And an extra unsalted steak portion for my friend here." He gestured to Max, who perked up at the mention of food. Emily jotted it down with a grin. "1 coffee, 1 sandwich, and a special order for the gentleman. Coming right up." As Emily headed inside, Keanu pulled his script from his jacket, spreading it on the table. He alternated between reviewing lines and patting Max, the dog, lounging beside him like an old companion. "Just a little longer, buddy," he murmured, rubbing Max's head. "Food's coming soon." True to her word, Emily returned with the coffee, the rich aroma stirring Keanu's senses. "Steak's almost ready," she assured him, setting the cup down. But before he could take a sip, a commotion shattered the peace. A burly man in a biker vest, Jake, strode past, his face twisted in a sneer. "Filthy animals," he muttered, loud enough for Keanu to hear, sitting at tables like they're people. Keanu's muscles tensed, but before he could respond, Jake's boot lashed out, catching Max in the side. The dog yelped, a pained whimper that morphed into defensive barking, drawing every eye on the patio. Keanu sprang to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, his calm demeanor evaporating. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Stepping between Max and Jake, the biker took a step back, momentarily startled, but his sneer returned. "Control your beast," he spat. "How dare it bare its teeth at me?" Keanu's hand rested on Max's back, calming the dog as he stared Jake down. "He only reacts to threats. You provoked him. Don't mess with someone's dog." Jake laughed, a harsh sound, and walked off, tossing back. "You'll regret that." The tension lingered as Jake disappeared around the corner, his heavy boots echoing in Keanu's ears. He checked Max over, relieved to find no serious injury, though the dog's tail wagged more slowly now. Emily approached with their food, her face etched with concern. "I'm so sorry about that," she said, setting the plates down. "You both okay?" Keanu nodded, forcing a reassuring smile. "We're fine, thanks." He settled back into his chair, the steak sandwiches aroma pulling him back to the moment. Max's nose twitched, a string of drool forming as he eyed his portion. Keanu chuckled. "All right, buddy, let's eat." They dug in, the simple act of sharing a meal easing the earlier strain. But as Keanu finished his sandwich, a glance at his watch reminded him their break was nearly over. "We've got to head back soon," he told Max, giving the dog a pat. "First, I need the restroom. Wait here, okay?" Max tilted his head, then flopped back onto the chair with a huff, earning a grin from Keanu. He caught Emily's eyes. She passed with a tray. "Mind keeping an eye on him?" "I'll be quick." She nodded warmly. "No problem at all." Keanu wove through the cafe's tables to the back, where a small restroom sign hung. To his dismay, a short line waited ahead. He considered returning to Max, but the pressure in his bladder won out. Minutes ticked by, his foot tapping impatiently, a nagging unease creeping in ridiculous, he told himself. Max was safe with Emily. Finally, he emerged, hurrying back to the patio. His heart sank at the sight. Max alone, Emily nowhere in view. The dog struggling to breathe, his body heaving in distress. Keanu rushed to Max's side, panic clawing at his chest. "Buddy, what's wrong?" he whispered, kneeling as Max choked, his eyes unfocused. "Water," he called out, voice tight. A younger waitress, Lily, her tag read, darted over with a bottle. Keanu tilted Max's jaw, pouring water carefully to dislodge whatever was stuck. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a final heave, Max swallowed, the immediate crisis passing. But his breathing remained labored, his tail limp. Emily returned, breathless. "I'm so sorry. The kitchen needed me. I asked Lily to watch him." Lily stepped forward, nervous. "A guy came by. He seemed friendly, fed him a sausage. I thought it was okay." She described him burly, bearded, a tiger claw patch on his vest. Keanu's blood ran cold. "Jake, this wasn't an accident." "Is there a vet nearby?" he asked, urgency sharpening his tone. Emily pointed down the street. 3 blocks. Take a left. You can't miss it." As Keanu stood, Max collapsed, legs buckling. Without hesitation, Keanu scooped the dog into his arms, adrenaline masking the weight. With a nod to the stunned waitresses, he bolted toward the vet, praying they'd make it in time. Keanu's boots pounded the pavement as he raced through Brooklyn Heights, Max's limp weight cradled in his arms. The pit bull's shallow breaths rasped against his chest, each one a dagger of urgency driving him forward. Sweat streaked down, his face blurring his vision, but he couldn't slow. Passersby turned to stare, their murmurs a distant buzz as his world narrowed to the dog and the desperate need to reach help. 3 blocks stretched like miles, the sun's glare relentless, but then it appeared. A white building with a blue cross sign a beacon of hope amid the haze. He burst through the veterinary clinic's doors, his voice hoarse with strain. "Please, I need help. My dog's been poisoned." The reception area snapped into motion. A woman in scrubs, Dr. Laura, her name tag read, strode forward, her calm authority cutting through the chaos. "Bring him this way," she directed, leading Keanu to an exam room. "Put him on the table." Keanu laid Max down gently, his hands lingering on the dog's fur, reluctant to let go. Max's eyes fluttered, unfocused, his tongue slack against the cold metal surface. Dr. Laura began her examination, her movements swift and precise. "What happened?" she asked, her gaze never leaving Max. Keanu's words tumbled out in a rush. "Someone fed him something, a sausage, I think. It must have been laced with poison." He started choking, then collapsed. Dr. Laura nodded, her face tightening. "His pupils are dilated, and his symptoms suggest poisoning, likely drug-related, given the speed." She turned to a nurse, hovering nearby. "Get blood tests running now. We need to ID the substance." As the nurse darted off, Dr. Laura outlined her plan. "We'll start with activated charcoal to neutralize the poison, then 4 fluids to flush his system and stabilize him. We'll adjust once we have test results." Keanu nodded, his throat tight. "Do whatever you need to. Just save him." As the medical team swarmed around Max, hooking up monitors and prepping the charcoal, Keanu was ushered to the waiting room. The sterile smell of antiseptic hit him, grounding him as reality sank in. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, dialing Chris, the director. "Chris, it's Keanu," he said when the call connected, his voice catching. "Max is in the vet clinic. He's been poisoned. I don't know when we'll be back." Chris's initial frustration gave way to concern. "Forget the shoot. We'll reschedule. Just take care of him and document everything, Keanu. We might need it." Hanging up, Keanu texted Tom, the dog handler, asking him to come to the clinic. As he sank into a chair, his mind churned fear for Max, warring with a growing anger at whoever had done this. The clinic's waiting room clock ticked relentlessly, each second an eternity as Keanu sat, hands clasped tightly. Dr. Laura emerged after what felt like hours, her expression serious but not grim. "Max is stable for now," she said, sitting beside him. "The charcoal's working and the fluids are helping. Blood tests show a narcotic mixed with a toxin could have been lethal without quick action. He's not out of the woods, but we're hopeful." Keanu exhaled, relief tempered by a cold realization. This was no accident. Jake's sneering face flashed in his mind, the tiger claw patch on his vest a damning clue. Tom arrived, breathless and wide-eyed. "How's Max?" he asked. Keanu filled him in, his voice low and steady despite the storm inside. "He's fighting, but I need to sell something. Can you stay with him?" Tom nodded, confused but willing. "Of course. But where are you going?" Keanu's jaw tightened. "To find the guy who did this." He turned to Dr. Laura. "I'm covering all his expenses. Do everything you can." She assured him they would, and Keanu handed Tom the leash and water bowl, a symbolic shift of duty. "I'll be back," he promised, then strode out, his walk purposeful, his mind clear. Brooklyn Heights blurred past as he retraced his steps to iron and ash. The bar loomed ahead, its weathered facade a silent challenge. Keanu paused across the street, observing. Jake and his crew lounged outside, their laughter grating, their postures aggressive as they harassed a young employee, Ryan, sweeping the entrance. Keanu approached quietly. "Rough crowd," he commented, nodding toward the bikers. Ryan glanced up, recognition flickering before fear took over. "You have no idea," he muttered. "They've been terrorizing us for months. Last time, they broke my hand when I tried to stop them." Keanu frowned, his sense of injustice flaring. How long's this been going on? Ryan sighed. Too long. I want out, but the boss knows where I live. I'm scared to leave. Through the bar's grimy windows, Keanu saw Jake shove a patron, the scene confirming his suspicions. Direct confrontation would be reckless. A plan formed. He had connections, someone who could handle this right. He pulled out his phone, dialing Dan, a sheriff, an old friend. Dan, it's Keanu, he said when the call connected, his voice urgent but controlled. I need your help. There's a biker gang at Iron and Ash, poisoning dogs and intimidating people. They hurt Max. I'm here now. Dan's voice was calm, steadying. I get it, Keanu. Don't do anything rash. Stay put. We'll be there soon. Keanu agreed, pocketing his phone. He glanced at Ryan, offering a reassuring nod. Help's coming. Keep your head down. The distant wail of sirens began to rise, and Keanu stepped back, ready to let justice take its course. The police arrived with silent precision, their cars rolling up to Iron and Ash without fanfare. Officers spilled out, movements coordinated, catching the bikers off guard. Keanu watched from across the street as they stormed the bar, the element of surprise tipping the scales. Through the windows, he saw tables overturn, patrons scatter, and Jake's crew scramble in vain. The search was methodical. Officers emerged with bags of evidence, their voices carrying snippets about narcotics and toxins found in the storage room. This wasn't just personal use. It was distribution. Arrests followed swiftly. Each biker cuffed and read their rights with professional efficiency. Flashing lights painted the scene in eerie reds and blues, drawing a crowd. Keanu slipped on his sunglasses, aware of his visibility, but his focus shifted as the last of the bikers were let out. Jake emerged, hands bound, his eyes locking onto Keanu's. Recognition flared, followed by a mix of rage and fear. Time slowed as they faced each other across the chaos. Keanu took a deep breath, centering himself, then spoke, his voice low and firm. You know, there's a line I read recently that fits right now. Don't mess with a man's dog. This is real life, and actions have real consequences. Jake's face contorted. I hope that mutt died, he spat, straining against the officer holding him. Keanu's expression didn't waver, though his eyes hardened. He didn't, and now you'll have time to think about why hurting an innocent animal was a bad idea. He turned away, ignoring Jake's shouted curses as the officer shoved him into a squad car. The weight on Keanu's shoulders lifted slightly, closure, not vengeance, settling in its place. The threat was neutralized, the neighborhood safer for a dot. As the police wrapped up, Keanu caught Ryan's eye. The young man stood straighter, a flicker of hope in his gaze. Keanu nodded once, then turned back toward the vet clinic. The streets that had seen him sprinting with Max now bore witness to his measured return, the tension replaced by resolve. He'd faced the man who'd hurt his friend and done so without losing himself. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows. But Keanu's steps were steady. Max was waiting, and that was what mattered now. Justice had been served not by his hands, but through the system he'd trusted Dan to wield. With one last glance at the fading chaos of Iron and Ash, he walked on, ready to see this through to the end. Keanu pushed through the vet clinic's doors, the antiseptic scent hitting him anew as he stepped into the quiet reception area. Dr. Laura waited near the counter, her tired smile a beacon of good news. Mr. Reeves, she greeted, her voice warm despite the long day. Max is stabilizing. The antidotes and fluids are working. He's responding well. We've countered most of the poison's effects. Keanu felt a wave of relief crash over him, loosening the knot in his chest. That's incredible, doctor. What's next? She led him to Max's recovery area, explaining as they walked. We'll keep him overnight for observation, monitor for complications. He'll need meds, anti-nausea, and liver protectants, and a special diet, but his prognosis is good. They reached a small enclosure where Max lay on a soft bed, tubes, and wires a stark contrast to his sturdy frame. His eyes lifted at Keanu's approach, and his tail gave a weak wag, a spark of life amid the fragility. Keanu knelt, his hand finding Max's head, fingers tracing the familiar contours. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, his voice thick. "You're a fighter. We got the bad guys." Max's tongue flicked out, brushing Keanu's wrist, and a lump rose in his throat. Dr. Lavra smiled at the exchange. He should be ready to go home tomorrow. Just follow the care instructions, and he'll be back to himself soon. Keanu nodded, already planning. "I'll be here first thing. Call me if anything changes." As they finalized details, a small TV in the corner flickered with local news. The anchor's voice cut through. A biker gang was arrested today at Iron and Ash, facing charges of drug distribution and animal cruelty. Evidence includes toxins linked to a dog poisoning. Keanu's gaze lingered on the screen, no mention of him, thanks to Dan's discretion. The bar's owner was under investigation. The place shuttered pending inquiry. A quiet satisfaction settled in him. The day's chaos had rippled into something bigger, safer for everyone. His phone buzzed as he stepped outside, Chris's name lighting the screen. "Keanu, how's Max?" the director asked, concern lacing his tone. Keanu summarized the recovery, emphasizing the positive. "He'll be back in a few days." "We can't rush him," Chris sighed, then softened. "You're right. We'll shift the schedule, shoot your solo scenes first. Take care of him?" They hashed out logistics, Chris's flexibility a relief. Hanging up, Keanu breathed in the cooling air of Brooklyn Heights, the streets now tinged with dusks. Calm, he reflected on the ordeal, how a simple walk had tested him, forging a bond with Max beyond the script. That trust would shine on screen, he knew it. With a final glance toward the clinic, he headed to his hotel, a small, contented smile curving his lips. Tomorrow, he'd bring Max home. This story of Keanu and Max is more than a thrilling tale. It's a testament to the quiet strength of compassion and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Keanu's journey reflects a deep humanism, his refusal to let cruelty go unanswered, his tender care for a creature in need, and his choice to seek resolution through reason rather than rage. It's a reminder that heroism isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's the steady hand that comforts a friend, or the voice that calls for help when it's needed most. Max, too, embodies resilience, a loyal soul who fights to survive against malice. Together, they show us the power of connection between man and animal, between right and wrong, and the ripple effect of standing up for what matters. If this story moved you, there's more where it came from. Subscribe to Legacy Stories for a treasure trove of narratives that celebrate the human spirit, from unsung heroes to bonds that defy the odds. Join us to explore tales that inspire, provoke, and linger long after the last word. Your next favorite story is waiting.